Welcome to the Euros edition of the Football Show, live here from Glasgow. I'm joined today by Alan Ruff, Blair Malloy and Alison McConnell as we look ahead to Scotland's second group game against Switzerland. But before we get into any of that, we have a special guest live from Cologne. Peter Martin is there. Peter, how is the mood in Cologne ahead of this game?
Well, thankfully, the misery of what was happening in the Allianz Arena on Friday night hasn't quite disappeared. The pain's still there for a lot of Scotland fans. And remember, by the way, they've shelled out a lot of money. So they didn't actually shell out that money to wear a Scotland strip, sing Flower of Scotland, and then suddenly watch their team get battered 5-1 without really laying a glove on Germany. So the criticism has been quick. And again, the criticism towards the players and what they produced, I think, is fair criticism. The manager got a little bit prickly in the press conferences, but I think even Steve Clarke knows that, from his press conference yesterday, the players have got to step up, stop talking, and get on the pitch and produce a performance against Switzerland that everybody can be proud of.
Did you bump into a few Scotland fans on the journey up to Cologne from Munich? Is there a bit of optimism now heading into this game, or is it maybe still a bit dampened after that 5-1 defeat?
Well, I think the word is disappointed. But other than that, the Scotland fans have, they've received praise from the police in Munich because of their conduct and their behaviour. Because I think a lot of pubs will realise that they've made huge profits over a 3 to 4 day period. They drank a lot, they sang a lot, and they mixed well with the German fans, and they were absolutely fantastic, a credit. And I thought, inside the stadium, I thought they deserved special mention for the respect they showed towards the German national anthem. That said, since then, I've been speaking to a lot of the Scotland fans. Yes, disappointed about the performance, but now looking and realising exactly what Steve Clarke said. The Germans are a class above. This is the battle now. This was always the battle to try and get the 4 points. Is it 3 points against Switzerland, or is it the 3 points they can get against Hungary? Can they get a draw somewhere? Could we get 2 wins? My gut feeling on this is the biggest hurdle for us is coming on Wednesday night against the Swiss, because I think they're a good outfit. I think they're going to cause us problems, and I think that's the biggest hurdle. If we get a point out of that game and can go into the Hungary game, Hungary, I think, are a level below Switzerland. I think we could get a win against them. But as ever with Scotland, it's biting your nails stuff, Patrick.
Interesting what you're saying there, Peter. Obviously, Steve Clarke, he was much more buoyant mood yesterday. Now, we might only be looking to get a point out of that game against the Swiss. Do you think he'll be setting up to go and try and get the 3 and go all out that we didn't see against Germany?
Yeah, absolutely, Blair. They've got to go on the front foot. I don't know about, and listen, you've got the best man there ever to comment on it. Alan Ruff played at, World Cups and played against teams that they weren't expected to win against. And then when you are on the back foot trying to get points, you have to then be positive. You have to then have players who are going to step up to the plate, who want the ball, who want to move forward and pass. We I think, managed in the Allianz Arena on Friday night. After about 35 minutes, we managed our first passage of play with 4 or 5 passes. Now, that's how poor we were. This time around, I think the midfield have got to step up. The back line somehow has got to keep it tight. And then we've got to get service to whoever plays up front. Shea Adams, I think, is going to be the man who'll get the nod again for a certain period of the game. But we've got to go on the front foot. The Swiss are not as good as the Germans, but they are a good outfit, and they've got 4 or 5 top drawer players who are playing at top clubs, and they will cause us problems. And you only have to look at some of the players: Akanji at Man City, Scher at Newcastle. You've got Ndoye. You've also got Granit Xhaka, who's had a great season at Bayer Leverkusen. And they've got Dua up front, who is a quick centre forward who plays off the shoulder. So I think Scotland have got to try and high press, work hard, try and cause Switzerland problems. But as Ruffy all know, when you're coming off the back of a really difficult result, all the teams got to stick together, block out the noise, and then take the bull by the horns and have a go.
You mentioned Shea Adams, he's your person to start up top. Do you think, Steve Clarke, it's just tactical, or would you like to see a few personnel changes in the squad for Switzerland?
Well, it's interesting. I think if the biggest one we're all talking about is who's going to play at right back. Anthony Ralston didn't have a great game. Does he go for a James Forrest out on that right side? Does he switch Kieran Tierney to the right flank? I know Kieran Tierney hates playing in that right back role, or even right full back. So he's got a dilemma. Does he put Forrest in there, maybe look for him in an attacking sense, but hope he can get back and help that back three? It will be a back five at times. We know that. Grant Hanley, I think, will come in for obviously the suspended Ryan Porteous. So he's got big decisions to make. The reason why I think Shea Adams will get the nod, he needs players who are going to work. He needs players that's going to close down the Swiss side so that they don't get an easy out from the back. So that's why I'm always of the opinion that Lawrence Shankland is not that type of player. He will try and bring him on, maybe 20 minutes to go to try and maybe get something in the box for Shankland. Shankland's not one of those players who, he's not a Frank McAvaney from the old days who'd chase an empty bag on a windy day. His work rate's not like that. That's not the type of player he is.
Thanks, Peter, for joining us over there in Cologne. Head out and enjoy the sights. See, to Friday's game, so disappointing opening one for Scotland.
Yeah, it was disappointing. It was interesting listening to Peter there, having been in that circumstances and two occasions in World Cup qualifiers. Obviously, Argentina, we lost the first game badly. The reaction for that game was horrendous. So Peter's right, the players have got to unite together. And I think it doesn't matter what team you're at, whether it's a club level or international level, players do get together. They sort of a bond together. They know the criticism. And the immediate thing you want to do is make sure the people who are giving you that criticism eat their words. That's the biggest thing. But, I think if you were to analyse the game going into it, if you got anything out of the Germany game, it would be a bonus. I think 100%. They know the next two games are the important ones. They've got to take it. I hope we don't have to wait until the last game because that would be too much. But the disappointment for the Germany game was there for everybody. So I think it's up to the players to respond to that.
Ali, there obviously has been a lot of criticism from the Scotland team, from the tactics that they have. Is there any positives they could take from that game?
No. That's a simple answer. I don't think there was anyone who came out of the game that had pass marks. I think it was collectively and individually a dreadful performance. I think the only thing you can take out of it is that you move on as quickly as possible. It was a game where it was almost a free hit. I hate that term, a free hit, but it wasn't a game where anything was anticipated from Scotland. Now, the worst case scenario came to fruition. I think the worst case scenario was being hammered, which has happened. I think now it's just about regrouping, about trying to not panic, almost just to say, look, Scotland have players of a decent standard, a decent quality. Look, we are Kieran Tierney, Andy Robertson, Scott McTominay, John McGinn are playing their football. Like, there is a strong spine in that side. You look at some of the results from the qualification campaign, and I think the frustration from Friday night is that you wanted to see a competitive performance. You wanted to see a bit like what you saw for England last night, just making it tough, difficult, competitive. That's the frustration. You weren't able to compete in any level. Now I think it's about, have you got a point to prove? What have you got about you? And this is where you need to prove it.
Do you think the performance is more important against Switzerland than the result? Scotland come into this one win in their last 10. Mm-hmm. Do you need to see a bit more?
I think it just needs to be a result. It needs to be a result. I actually think the performance is secondary in a tournament. You just want the result now. You just want to get something on the board. I think in an ideal world, you marry both of those together. You come out on the back of a strong performance in the Gardens Rosy. But I think ultimately it's about taking something from this game.
Such a strong start from the Germans. Do you think maybe Scotland were kind of thrown off a little bit? They weren't maybe even expecting how good the Germans were going to be, Blair?
I mean, I think there was a lot of optimism from the Scottish fans, and maybe some of it misplaced. I don't know. There was a lot of building up to this campaign, going, we can get a draw, we can get something out of this game. Germany are a top side. Let's not forget about this. For the past 20, 30 years of European football, they will always go into a tournament as one of the favourites. There was maybe a little bit of questioning coming into this game about what Nagelsmann was doing with the side, but you've seen those twin tens of Musiala and Florian Wirtz. They absolutely tore Scotland apart. And well, let's be honest, we're not going to face something of that quality for the next 2 games, which has definitely given Scotland a little bit of hope. But I thought what was interesting was after that game, the players came out and spoke about the anger that they felt after that performance. Is that something you like to hear when a player comes out with that?
Yeah, I think individually everybody knows that you don't have to be told if you've had a bad game. You don't know. Individually, your performance, you can analyse it. As soon as they go back to the hotel, they're in a room, they'll be sharing it with each other, they'll be going through it. And as Alison said, I don't think there's any of them could come out here and say, I was not bad for 5 or 10 minutes. None of them put in a performance at all. So that'll be hurting because, as you're saying there, they're top-class players, they're international players playing with big clubs. So for me, a lot of them, I think they were caught in the headlights. I think a lot of the Scotland team, aren't they used to be on the back foot? You look at Anthony Ralston with Celtic, he's always up in the other 18-yard box. He's never having somebody run at him. He's never been pinned back. He's never, and I suppose Tierney's at that as well. And Porteous obviously hasn't played at that level. So I think the manager's got a lot to look at in the next team selection. And we all keep saying we need to take something out of the game. I think he needs to pick a team that's going to be on the front foot. There's no point in waiting in Switzerland, dominating the game. We need to be in their half. We need to be getting. I thought the other night against Germany, the only way we were going to get something was a free kick or a corner. We have to get into positions where Shea Adams is getting his free kicks, where somebody wide is getting a foul out there, or somebody's getting a corner, because we generally don't seem to break these big teams down. So, right for the very, very start, I think we've got to show our intent.
Despite all the optimism heading into that game, you're half-time, you're 3-0 down, 10 men, you play in these big tournaments, the team comes in. What can the manager say? What can he do to kind of lift them for that second half?
Well, I think it's at that stage at 3-0, it's damage limitations. You could see the substitutions that he was putting on. He knew against 10 men they were going to score, And that always baffles me when I hear a manager after a game saying it's always difficult playing against 10 men, We can't break them down. Well, they showed that theory's right out the window, because they were just running riot. But no, I think it's damage limitations. And I mean, let's be honest, it could have been 6.
Could easily
have been 7.
Could easily have been.
But in hindsight, you get it out the window. And I hate going away back to Argentina in '78. Bad result against Peru, bad result against Iran. Everybody's against you, everybody's saying this and that. And then you come out and play the finalists and we beat them 3-2. These things happen in football, when the players unite together, and as I said earlier, want to prove everybody wrong. Sometimes you get a performance. I think we need the performance against Switzerland. I don't think we want to be waiting. I think we want to go into the Switzerland game, hopefully with a win, hopefully with 3 points, and you go into the last game maybe knowing that a draw's enough. I'd rather go into the game knowing a draw's enough than having to beat them. So I think this game against Switzerland is really important.
What would you change? Who would you start?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'd like us to play 2 strikers, but I know that's not going to happen. In the modern day, it's always somebody supporting off. I'd like to see McGinn getting pushed forward a wee bit, But again, you've got a possession of the ball, and that goes back to Tam McManus. Keep raving about Gilmer. You play Gilmer. Who do you sacrifice? Is it Christie? Christie's the only one you can sacrifice. Can I see you sacrificing a McGinn, a McTominay, a McGregor? I'd like to see width. I think if you saw some of the games last night in some of the other countries, there was a lot of wingers, prepared to go into the last third and take people on. I'd like us to play somebody like that, who, if it's James Forrest, let it be James Forrest. But I think the team selection has to be positive rather than let's just sit in and be hard to beat. I think we need to go and win it.
Alison, unless Steve Clarke changes the formation, he's going to have to bring in a new centre-back. Who do you want to see fill in that role?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Grant Hanley. I think that's probably the obvious choice. I think it's difficult now. I think obviously all the injury situations and the problems that were there before the tournament started. I don't think there's a huge amount of options, even across the middle. I'm not sure, like what you were saying, when you look at changing it and bringing Gilmore in, I think there's a huge question mark about who you take out, who do you sacrifice to go and try and change things about. I think my suspicion would be for Christie to come out maybe and Gilmore to go in. But I think to answer your question, I think it would be Grant Hanley.
I was really surprised he didn't start Billy Gilmore the other night. I know Peter was saying like yesterday that it may have not made that much of a difference, but I think Billy Gilmore, you look at him in the Premier League this season, he's maybe Scotland's most accomplished ball carrier and so comfortable on the
Technical
ball.
player,
I was at the Finland game before the tournament kicked off, and Billy Gilmore operating that sort of double pivot with Callum McGregor, they were really setting the tempo for the game, which made it a surprise to me why he didn't come in the opening game.
I think this game more than the Germany game, because for me, Billy Gilmore is a possession player. Against Germany, we didn't have any possession.
Yeah.
We couldn't get the ball off them at all. So I don't think he would have been, a force against Germany. But against Switzerland, I do think if we have possession, and I think we will have a lot more possession than we had against Germany, like we're saying, he could be the one that pulls the strings. But I still think against Germany, I found our three best players in the midfield just weren't accepting the ball. There was nobody coming, nobody saying, "Give me it."
Maybe a bit nervous.
Give it to me.
Just dominating.
They were just so aware of every time we lost possession, they were hitting us. And again, Andy Robertson, I've never seen him defending more. He's usually up on the other side, 18-yard, throwing balls into the box. We just needed. I thought the biggest failure was losing possession of the ball far too quickly early on, first 20-25 minutes. We need somebody like Gilmore to get his foot in the ball and start dictating things.
There's been a bit of criticism from Angus Gunn, the goal. He started off in goal. Do you think he'd be a bit disappointed with a few of his mistakes?
Yeah, personally, he will. I think every goalkeeper analyses his performance. He'll be big enough to know. This is just my opinion. I think you could see his face at the first goal. He got a full hand to that. He expected it to be palmed round the post or away. It never happened. You could see the disappointment. I'm not personally having an attack at him. I thought he could have done better at the Porteous one. I thought he could maybe have held that or pushed it to the side rather than pushing it out. But I don't have to tell him that. He knows, that particular mistake costs us a player and costs us the penalty as well. But I wouldn't have blamed him for the last goal. I thought that was a terrifically struck shot round a player. He was obviously never saw that. But no, when you're the goalkeeper, you're different for the other players. You've got to go away and think about what you could have done and what you didn't do, that kind of thing. But it would have been a sleepless night for him. There's no doubt about that. But again, he's big enough. He's had a few international caps under his belt. He's got to come out and always, I keep saying about goalkeepers, have a go at a goalkeeper, and the next game he'll be the star man.
How hard is that though when you've come?
It's a hard one in the night when you're lying there trying to get to sleep and you're analysing the whole game because you're not like an outfield player. It's you, and but you've got to be strong enough, to go out the next day and you'll go to training and you'll get shots and that. But it's all about turning up, and if he gets a save in the first minute, that everything goes right out the window.
It's obviously such an important position in the team. Do you have any chance that Steve Clarke might change it up in goal for the Switzerland game?
No, absolute certainty. Angus Gunn will be in goals for the Switzerland game and probably the Hungary game unless something catastrophic happens. Steve Clarke has already proved he's a loyal manager with who he's taken to the tournament, who he starts. I think he's set on Angus Gunn being his number one, and I think you'll know yourself how damaging that would be for his confidence if he could be taken out at this point after maybe a couple of mistakes. He will 100% be in goals for the Switzerland game.
Well, Steve Clarke's been speaking to the media ahead of the Switzerland game about how he's been talking to the players, getting them ready for the upcoming game.
Obviously frustrated. I'm frustrated on the touchline. Everybody's frustrated on the touchline. You get these moments all the time, but you don't normally see it because we're tucked under a canopy or whatever. And Austin just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time as I turned round after taking a short free kick when we should have been putting the ball to the box as we did when we scored the goal. It wasn't Austin's fault because the players make that decision on the pitch. And we got counter-attacked. And I'm thinking, well, we've lost enough goals, Austin. We don't need to lose any more goals. And then we just had a little discussion about it, that was all. Listen, he's got long blonde hair, but I'm not going to give him a cuddle.
Well, I think that was him talking about his bust-up with Austin Macphee, but we'll go straight to that, Ruffy. Is that a normal thing you can expect when the pressure's on in these big tournaments?
Most definitely. The way the game was going, the frustration, and sometimes you need to vent it, and unfortunately if you turn around and the nearest person to him gets it, it could have been anybody. But I think he spoke about it there quite rightly, that the things that go through a manager's mind, unless you've actually been in the touchline, and I saw a lot of clips of him standing there, and you could tell, you know, the frustration that he was feeling, you know, and he tried to do his best by taking the substitutions and all that, but it just wasn't working. And you know, he sort of hides it a wee bit. I don't know him personally at all. He hides it, you know, and he's very positive, but he's only human, you know. He's venting an anger inside, and unfortunately he turned around to have a conversation with somebody that was Austin, and he got it.
I do think it's stuff. It does happen at times. I think it's a really emotional moment like that. I think, you know, you're in a very public place, and you have a certain element of behaviours that you need to adhere to on the touchline, but at some point, you know, it bubbles over. I think it's probably more common than you really realise it in games, but you know, it was obviously, even in the immediate aftermath of the game, it was still very raw. You know, bit the head off. I think it was Matthew Lindsay that Herald absolutely took his head off for asking about it. He's obviously had a bit of time to let it sit and simmer and reflect on it, and he's able to joke about it yesterday when it comes round again. But I think it just maybe was reflective of this real sense of frustration that you've got at that point.
I think you see the two sides of Steve Clarke there. Yesterday in his press conference, he was in great mood, having a laugh with the press. Obviously, had time to digest that result and is now looking forward in a positive mood. I seen him get a little bit of criticism, particularly from the English media, and how he handled that press conference after the game. But I think that's just how desperate he was to get a decent result in that opening game, and then especially after a 5-1 hiding.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want the national team manager to come out smiling after that. You want the manager to be really down and serious and focused and not wanting to think about anything else.
I think you see it time and time again. For us as journalists, when you speak to someone in the immediate aftermath of a game, we've all had our head bitten off for asking a question, because you're getting people, when they're raw, they have to talk. I think if you gave them a choice, do you want to come in and speak to it, you would sack it. But the fact is, you know, you're coming in, you're embarrassed, it's fairly humiliating, you have to come in and you have to account for why it's all gone wrong at a point when you feel particularly vulnerable. So I think these moments, they happen, and they happen every week. They happen time and time again. It's just obviously when you're on a stage like that, it's magnified hugely.
I think it was just an example of his frustration about how it went, but obviously they can't linger on it, Ruffy. They've got to move on. Switzerland, personally, I was really impressed, but especially the first half against Hungary, and I think they could be a huge opposition for Scotland.
Yeah, I think in the first half, the level that they played at wasn't far away from Germany. In the first half, the way they passed the ball about, the way they found gaps, the way they found holes, got the ball wide, put balls into the box, you know, obviously they get the goal, and you always get the goal, your confidence goes double, you know, because you're ahead, and then you get another one, you know, but there were chances that Hungary had, you know, the chances, obviously they scored, but you know, I think again, you know, we've got to be better than what we were against Germany, but I think Switzerland are a better side than Hungary.
Do you think the Scotland fans might be a bit more nervous now heading into this one, Blair?
I don't think nervous as such. I still think that there'll be a lot of optimism. A lot of people who would have thought, okay, like Alison said, almost like a free swing, the Germany game. Granted, you wouldn't have wanted to be beaten 5-1, but at the same time, this is almost where the tournament starts now. You need to write that off and go, okay, I think we're going to need 4 points to get through this group. 4 points from either Switzerland or Hungary, any which way we get it. I think that they have to go out and try and win the game. I don't think that going to Switzerland and trying to get a point and then banking on we might beat Hungary, I don't think that's the approach to take. I think it has to be a case of we need to go out and try and get 3 points in the bank. But like you said, that won't be an easy task, because Switzerland proved the other day how good they can be with that Hungary performance.
Alison, obviously we know how much it means to Scotland. They need 3 points, but for the Swiss, they can all but confirm their place in the round of 16. Is it going to be just a mentality battle? Who wants this more?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I think both teams know what's at stake for them. You know, if Scotland are to come out and win it, then it puts Switzerland back in the mire going into the final game. But I think from Steve Clarke's perspective, right away, it's a possibility of immediate redemption after Friday night. This is an opportunity to go and salvage the tournament. It was always 4 points. This was the chat all the way through the start, was 4 points, was a target from the group. It's still on, but you have to go out now. You have to show that you're capable of moving on from Friday night. It is demoralising and dispiriting as it was. We have come to see the Scotland side and expect better from them. I think what was so frustrating for many people was the limpness of the performance. What you want to now see is a bit of heart, a bit of courage, a bit of spirit when you think of some of the performances that took us through the European campaign and and took Scotland to qualification, you want to see elements of that performance now against Switzerland.
I think it's obvious, Ruffy, that the squad hasn't reached the levels it had pre-qualification. Why do you think that is? Do you have any idea?
No, I think in all fairness, I think the manager picked 3 hard games, didn't he? Picked France and a couple of other ones, you know, and England. So, you know, I think we come through the group because we got wee breaks here and there, late goal at Norway and things like that, you know. We are a good side, you know. I just think when we go up to this level and, you know, Peter's already read out the teams that the players for Switzerland play for. I mean, that's absolutely impressive. I mean, I'm not knocking our players, but some of our players in the Championship, Norwich City, Bristol City, you know, so there's a level there, you know, and some of their guys are playing in European Cup finals, you know, so, but we have got players, as Alison said, we've got the Robertsons and McGinns and the McGregors, McTominays, who are all playing at a great level in the Premiership, so they've got to go out and show it, you know, but I think the mindset has to be get something out of the game, you know, go and put them under pressure, because they're going to come into the game on a high. They've just won a game, you know, they're going to walk into this game going, we're the bee's knees, where we're walking into this game, well, can we do it? You know, and that's a big difference. That's why I think first 10, 15 minutes we've got to go out and get a couple of corners, get balls into the box, a couple of shots at goal, make their goalkeeper make a save, get the support behind us, and they're the things that can benefit for you for the rest of the game.
You mentioned that high from the Swiss. The players will be feeling it, but also the fans must be excited heading into this one. Blair actually spoke to Swiss football journalist Craig King this morning. Let's hear what he had to say about how the fans are feeling.
And yeah, that performance really kind of eased some nerves, I think. And to be honest, not from my point of view, but from people that I speak to in Swiss football, they kind of viewed Scotland as one of the weaker teams in the group. And the performance they displayed against Hungary and Scotland's performance against Germany will probably only help to boost the confidence of Switzerland before this game. I think a lot of Swiss fans will be expecting the win, expecting the point at the very least, and I don't think they'll feel too threatened by Scotland, to be honest, which again shouldn't really underestimate Scotland, but you can probably see why there's a lot of confidence after Friday night.
Do you think that confidence is fair? Do you think Scotland are the weakest team in this league?
Yeah, I think the perception, certainly before the tournament might have been that, and then in the aftermath of Friday night, I think it doesn't do your standing too well. That might play into Scotland's hands, you know, if they're underestimated in any way, it may help them in some way. But yeah, I think Scotland can't afford to be bothered by what other people's perception is of them. The only thing they control is how they play, how they perform against teams, and whether or not they can go and get the points they need. That's their sole focus. You know, they're not overly concerned about what the perception is. It's about the only thing that's important here is the perception of themselves, about being able to recover from Friday night and go again.
I think this team obviously believes they can do it. As we've spoken about before, they don't have the form heading into this one. If they're going to get all 3 points against Switzerland, it needs to be that strong start. Do you see it coming, or do you just think maybe the Swiss might have a little bit too much for Scotland?
I think Scotland have to go in the front foot. As I said, I think they need to go for the win here. In terms of personnel for Steve Clarke, I think one of the really interesting places is right back. As Peter touched on it there, does he keep Anthony Ralston in the team? Does he maybe go for a more attacking James Forrest? Swiss on the left-hand side, they play with Michel Aebischer, who only scored his first international goal against Hungary. But what a goal it was. And he also put an assist. And he looked a real threat down that left. And with Scotland playing so narrow and almost box midfield, if you look at right back, he's going to be very isolated up against whoever's on the left for Switzerland, as well as them playing with that front three. They're very pacey. Dan and Doy's up there. They could bring in Shaqiri. They could bring in Dua again. They have a lot of pace going forward, so that's going to be a big problem area for Scotland. Is it a case of you maybe sit more defensive at the back and sacrifice that going forward, or do you put James Forrest in there and go for it and think we need another option on the wing?
I don't think you can play James Forrest in a Ralston role. You know,
Look at right wing.
It's not. What happens is
You have to play a back three, essentially.
I think you've got to play a 3-5
Yeah.
or 3-5. Somebody just supporting.
And then I think you're
And
in
then
danger of leaving yourself
you
too
can't play Forrest in a 3. You know, back there. You know, because as you've just said there, they've got a winger who's flying, and whatever you think of James Forrest, he's not going to be wanting a winger running at him and taking him at pace.
Do you trust him to play the right wing back role?
Yeah. I think we need somebody like that. We need somebody getting into their forward positions, getting into the box. I would go with three defenders at the back, just 3 out-and-out defenders, and let the 5 that we pick in midfield, who we all know are good players, to work some magic. You know, I don't think I could play Forrest in a Ralston role.
Ruffy, how do you see the score going? What's your score prediction?
I was impressed with Switzerland. And it's funny because I think getting into this group, was it not Hungary that was supposed to be, hadn't been beat for 14 games or so? They were supposed to be.
They were the second favourites.
Yeah, they were the
to go out of the
second
group.
favourites.
Yeah.
Now that's turned on its head a wee bit. I was impressed with Switzerland, but I think it's just about us. You know, I really do hope we can go and get a 2-1 win, but knowing us, it'll be 1 each, and we'll all be waiting next Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Do you agree with Ruffy?
Yeah, I was feeling a bit more optimistic before the Germany game when I thought we could get a point. I've tempered that a little bit with what I've seen against Germany. I think Switzerland, it'll be the sort of the double-edged sword of, as much as we need to win this game, Switzerland don't know that if they get a point or they get a win out of this, that effectively sees them through if they're not through already. I think it'll be a draw, and I can just see this all building up to this Hungary game. So I'm going to say 2-2.
Draw.
I'm going to go 2-1 Scotland.
2-1 Scotland. Alison?
With Blair, I think 1 each.
1 each. So it's all for Scotland to do. Another one of the home nations, though, got their campaign underway. England last night, a tense 1-0 victory over Serbia. Convincing enough for you, Ruffy?
Not convincing enough, because obviously they think they're going to win it. You know, knowing that performance, you're not going to. Yeah, they think.
You've been listening to it.
But no, they've got players that they can build on that. You know, you have to say it was a quality goal, a fantastic goal. You know, you like to see goals getting scored. There were wee iffy moments when they were under a wee bit of pressure, and as the game, like any game, the longer it goes at 1-0, you start doubting. Well, we're not going to get another one, so let's make sure we don't lose one. So they got out of it, and they'll be oozing of confidence as they usually are.
I know we joked about England being the favourites. They're still the favourites after that victory. Can you understand that? Like,
I think if you look at the squad, if you look at the talent within that squad, and I mean, you look at Bellingham, you know, the boy for the age he is and the stature and standing that he has within that team. I think Gareth Southgate has called him into his wee group of senior players, of influential senior players. I think he was nominated to give him the feedback from what the school of thought is from the younger players within the squad. But he just his performance last night, I thought he was excellent, and then how impressive he is every time he speaks. I think he just feels like a seasoned pro. I think there's an argument to say he's the best player in the world at the minute. So, and if you look at that squad, you look at the players that they've got, Harry Kane and all the rest of it, you think, I can see why they're favourites. However, what I would say is they were under pressure that second half. You know, Jordan Pickford, a couple of decent saves in the second period. I thought there were points where it looked as though they might force an equaliser. And to go back to what we said earlier, I think that was the kind of performance that Scotland had wanted to see on Friday night. Competitive, you know, you're playing against a superior team, but make it difficult for them, you know, go in and be organised and be tough to break and show a bit of courage yourselves. I think that's maybe just where some of Scotland's hangover comes from on Friday. But in terms of England, yeah, I definitely think that they'll go deep into the tournament. Whether or not they win it, I don't know.
Jude Bellingham, of course he deserves his plaudits, and I think I saw maybe a slightly different side to him last night. Every player in that Serbia team 6 foot tall. It's a really physical game, and he was standing right up to the challenge.
Yeah, I think the thing we always forget about Jude Bellingham, he doesn't turn 21 till next week.
Incredible.
He's still 20 years old, and he looks as though he could be captain of that team. Interesting, maybe slightly more negative in England. Jude Bellingham dominated that game last night, doesn't doubt about that. He was imperious in that sort of number 10. Bukayo Saka I thought was great. He was brilliant on the right hand side. I thought Phil Foden disappeared from that game because Jude Bellingham was taking up so much space. Is it, are we seeing a new Lampard Gerrard sort of deal? Because you look at Phil Foden and he likes to drift in for Man City, he likes to play in that free role. If you've got Jude Bellingham in there, there's nobody that's touching him in that position, and maybe is Foden a little bit overshadowed in it? I don't know, but they've got all sorts of talent, you know what I mean? You can and rhyme off the great players they've got. So England quarter-finals, semi-finals, finalists, you wouldn't put it past them.
But I guess that's the question, is does Gareth Southgate play his best players, or does he bench someone like a Phil Foden, Ruffy, to get the better team balance?
Well, when you've got that many good players, you know, that's where the manager earns his corn. You know, he's got to decide, particularly teams that they're playing, who would be best suited to play in this game in that position. But it's a great problem to have, you know, when you've got that many players. And as the guys are saying there, you know, they have got, Harry Kane hasn't scored yet, but I'm sure he will score in this tournament. When you've got somebody like that who's scored so many goals this season for his club, you know, it's always an asset, because there's going to be games that are going to be tight, very tight, and he's the kind of guy who'll come up with a winner.
Obviously, we're 4 days into the tournament. Who have you seen? Who's impressing you out of the matches we've watched?
I think there's been a few. I think you know, Germany, obviously. Like again, like when you look at the squad and you look at the individuals, the manager, the coach. I think Germany will be there or thereabouts. I think when you talk about sort of quarter-final, semi-final stage, I think you would definitely anticipate that they'd go deep. England, I think, will definitely go further into the tournament. I think it's all your old favourites. I think when you look at Spain as well, I think I'm not sure that there'll be too many surprises once you get to the latter stages.
Obviously still France, Belgium, Portugal, all still to get their campaign underway. This feels just a very competitive Euros. There doesn't seem to be any clear-cut winners or any team that are a step above.
But I think, like Alison, the usual suspects will be there in the last 8 or the last 4. You know, when I was away, I saw a lot of Spain. You know, if you've got a national team, you can afford to play a 16-year-old in it. You know, I think he's going to be one to watch. He's going to give something, you know, a bit of memory in this one. But I'd be interested to see France tonight. Everybody's saying France are up there. For me, I think France or Spain.
All to play for. Yep. There's plenty of football still to come, and I think everyone here is enjoying the football. 2, 5 and 8 p.m. It's great to watch. Well, thank you for joining us on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Here in Glasgow, we'll be keeping you up to date with all of the fans, and don't forget to stay up to date with the team over there in Germany for the upcoming game against Switzerland. For myself, Alan Ruff, Blair Malloy and Alison McConnell, we'll see you next time.